Have you ever worked at a company that has this amazing, inspiring mission, but you still felt kind of stuck? Where the values are up on the wall, but in reality, hesitation and indecision are what rule the day? Well, today we're going to dive into exactly why that happens, and we'll explore a really powerful way to fix it by shifting from external control to something much stronger: internal discipline. This question right here gets to the absolute heart of the problem. It's that subtle but honestly crippling feeling that so many of us have had. You believe in the big ideas, you believe in the mission, but you feel personally, well, inadequate or just unsure of how to actually move forward. So, what is really going on? Okay, let's put a name to this feeling because it's a real thing. It's called purpose-driven paralysis. And it doesn't just feel bad. It shows up as a couple of very clear symptoms that can grind even the best companies to a halt. First up, there's cultural inconsistency. This is that incredibly frustrating gap between what the company says it values, things like innovation or collaboration, and what people actually live through day to day. And over time, that gap does more than just cause confusion. It absolutely destroys trust. And that leads right into the next problem: decision paralysis. See, when people aren't sure if what they do will line up with the real culture, they just stop using their own judgment. Instead, they wait around for permission or they look to some rigid system for the right answer. And all that does is stall progress at every single turn. So what's the root cause of all this? What's really driving these symptoms? Well, it boils down to this fascinating and deeply human dynamic, and this framework calls it the paradox of power. Here's the paradox. Even when you totally believe in the mission, you find yourself waiting for some kind of external validation, a sign-off from a manager, and nod in a meeting. You bounce back and forth between faith in the company and this nagging feeling of, am I good enough? It's a vicious cycle that traps really smart, capable people in total inaction. And the consequences are serious. We're not just talking about projects moving a little slower. This leads to chronic self-doubt, a culture that is absolutely terrified of taking risks. And, yep, you guessed it, emotional fatigue and straight-up burnout. People just get exhausted from that constant internal conflict. So how do we break this cycle? How do we get out of this trap? Well, it requires a pretty big mental shift. We have to completely reframe what we even mean by the word empowerment. And here's the really surprising part. The solution is not what you think. It is not about leaders simply giving more power to their people. In fact, that approach can sometimes make the whole problem even worse. We have to move from that old model of external control, where power is something that's given to you, where you're always waiting for validation and asking for permission. We need to move to a new model, a model of internal discipline. This is where power isn't given. It's something you build. It's about operating from your own sense of clarity, using your own judgment, and taking initiative instead of waiting for the green light. So, how do we actually build this internal discipline? The good news is there's an actionable plan. It breaks down into 3 specific disciplines that help grow this new kind of empowerment from the ground up. Okay, here they are. The 3 disciplines are: number 1, restore agency; number 2, model adaptive mastery; and number 3, foster authentic self-alignment. These 3 things, working together, are the blueprint for building a culture that's genuinely resilient and proactive. All right, let's dig into that first one: restoring agency. This is the direct antidote to that feeling of helplessness, of just waiting around for someone to tell you what to do. So how do you do this? Well, leaders have to actively encourage critical thinking. You have to promote real ownership over projects and work. It's about fostering a deep sense of personal responsibility and consciously pushing back against that knee-jerk reaction to just rely on the system for every little answer. The second discipline, model adaptive mastery, is a huge one for leaders. This is not a do as I say, not as I do situation. You have to live these ideas, especially when things get messy. This means being transparent. It means showing resilience when things are ambiguous and no one has the answers. And when a leader navigates a really complex ethical problem out in the open, they're providing a powerful, living example of how the organization's values actually work in the real world. You got to show it, not just talk about it. And the final discipline is what really brings it all home. This is about connecting the work that people do back to who they are as individuals in a really personal way. The goal here is to help people integrate their own personal values with the company's mission.
And when that clicks, you get what's called psychological coherence. Work is no longer just a job, it becomes an authentic expression of who they are. And that enables people to operate from a profound place of clarity and initiative.
So, what happens when a company truly commits to these three disciplines? What's the big payoff? Well, the result is a powerful new way of operating for everyone involved, from the individual contributor to the organization as a whole. The outcome is called empowered accountability. This is what you get when you treat empowerment as an internal skill to be developed, not just some resource to be handed out. You create a culture where people act with both autonomy and responsibility because they are driven by their own inner clarity and initiative. And the benefits are just immense. You get stronger autonomy, for sure. You get more consistent ethical action across the board. The entire organization gets better at learning and adapting, and you start to see leadership qualities emerge at every single level. All of this combines to build a truly resilient organization that can handle whatever comes its way. So that brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with. As you think about all this, ask yourself, where does my team, or maybe my whole organization, need to shift? Where do we need to stop seeking external validation and start building more internal discipline? Because the answer to that question could be the key to unlocking all the potential that's been there the whole time.